Something almost entirely different. We're going to be looking at boarding technologies for trains at unstaffed stations, which is a growing issue in many countries of the world. And our presenter is Blais, who's been doing research and development related to accessible transportation since 2002. His research interests include transportation, accessibility, well-being, mental health, accessible design, human factors, and technologies. He has a Master's of Urban Planning from McGill University and has been managing research projects for Transport Canada since 2007. Daniel.
Thanks for the introduction, Anne, and good afternoon, everybody. Just like to thank the organizers of this excellent summit. I'm very happy to be here today presenting one of two projects, sort of recent projects on accessible transportation for the Transportation Development Centre, which is the R&D group for the Canadian Department of Transportation. So this is a project on boarding technologies for mobility device users at unattended railway stations. Just a little bit of background into this research. As Anne had stated, boarding a train for passengers using a wheelchair is a long-standing issue. However, it's felt that there are potentially low-cost and high-impact solutions available to address this issue. And those of you familiar with Canada will know that we have a very sparse and spread-out population that is served by one rail carrier. So the situation is a little bit different than in Europe and in the US, where there's a little bit more density. This project was initiated by the Canadian Transportation Agency following concerns raised by 4 municipalities in British Columbia. And another reason why we're doing this research is because of the well-being and human rights implications of accessible transportation. Having increased access to transportation contributes to better satisfaction in life, and it's also part of the Canadian Human Rights Code. And specifically here I want to talk about reliable service in terms of knowing what to expect when you arrive at a train station and you might need assistance as a wheelchair user. So the objective of the project is to investigate, identify, and test technologies that can assist passengers using mobility aids to board trains where the station or stop platform is not level with the car floor. And this is the situation in most train stations or stops on intercity train stations and stops across the country, except at the Montreal train station and in Quebec City. Just an image to highlight, this is, I believe this is Montreal. And so here the boarding platform is level with the car door for the rail car. And there are some what they call bridging plates there, circled in red, to bridge the gap so that a mobility device user can board the train. But this is the situation at most other stations along the rail network in Canada where there is no level boarding platform, and there's a significantly high gap. I think it's about 54 inches to board the train, which does cause some challenges. So I had mentioned earlier that 4 communities in British Columbia had expressed some concerns about the level boarding situation and wheelchair users and mobility device users being able to board the train. So I have some photos. Last year around this time, Via Rail organized some public consultations with these municipalities, and I was able to attend and go look at some of the train installations out there. So this is a photo of a train station. Well, it's sort of a community-run train station in Terrace, British Columbia. It's very nice. You can see at the door it is accessible. There's a level entrance at the doorway, and this is operated not by Via staff but by people in the community of Terrace, British Columbia. So we did proceed east from Terrace to the 3 other communities, And this is one of the other communities, New Hazelton, where this is what VIA would call on their system a sort of demand stop. So you have to make a request to be able to stop here. The train doesn't really stop here because of the low frequency of passengers getting on and off the train, the VIA train at this particular location in New Hazelton. There aren't really very many amenities for passengers. And then continuing east up there in northern BC, there's Smithers, which does have a similar situation with a station house. Again, the door there, the photo's a little bit dark, but there is a level entrance to the train station. It's also connected to a restaurant. Again, I don't think any VIA staff actually operate or work at this particular train station. And then the fourth municipality was Vanderhoof, where again there aren't very many amenities, also related to the low frequency of travelers boarding and disembarking the train. At this stop, there's basically a platform there, and that is maintained by CN because this is on CN's track, which is the national freight carrier in Canada. So these are some of the lifts that are available currently at 47 Via Rail stations. There are roughly about 350 or 60 Via Rail stops along the network, and they vary from the 4 images that I showed previously in terms of the amenities that are available there. And these are, this is a photo of a manual powered lift and of a person assisting a traveler in a wheelchair to get on the train. There are about 47, there are 47 staffed stations along the VIA network, and 35 of them have these lifts, if I'm quoting those numbers correctly. And while it is an operating lift, VIA has expressed some concerns about the usability of this type of device because it is very difficult to crank. It requires manual power, and of course it should only be, according to the VIA policy, VIA Rail employees who are assisting staff to board, assisting passengers to board the train because of liability issues if somebody were to get hurt. So just to give you an overview of the current situation, we were looking at alternate possibilities for initially for technologies for wheelchair users or persons using mobility devices to board the train. So this is a ramp with the current height of a rise overrun of 1 to 10. And so it would be quite difficult or unfeasible to use a ramp-based solution. So we're looking at ramp-based or lift solutions. So based on these, this current situation and some of the challenges and constraints that are present, we developed a project where we would look at the current standards and regulations in Canada and the US. We're also including Europe in there as well to look at the accessibility of rail cars. We want to speak and get information, speak with passengers and get information from passengers who use mobility aids to identify their travel needs, and also to look at what type of boarding the device would be preferred. Consulting also with VIA Rail staff to identify the operational needs in terms of how quickly the device can be deployed and how easily it can be operated, and the cost, obviously. So we want to identify solutions that are existing to meet passenger travel and the operational needs, provide a detailed test plan to test the solution, and then implement the test plan in a phase 2 of the project. So the current status of the project is that in the fall of 2013 we did issue a request for proposal. So we went out for bids to see if there was expertise that could address the project objective, and a contract was awarded to a consortium made up of railway and accessibility experts just this past summer. So at the bottom of the slide there are some of the names of the companies who got together to undertake the work. There's an engineering firm named Artang Pro, NetWis, which is a European rail expert on boarding technologies and other rail matters. Green City Streets is a representative from sort of sustainable development organization, and Les Consultations Tram, which is a Montreal-based organization that has some expertise in doing research on accessible transportation. So the research approach, and this was provided to us by the consortium, I just wanted to highlight that this team has put accessibility as their primary objective for this project, and they state that it's a must for today's train and infrastructure operations. And another important aspect to highlight is the link between the platform and the vehicle is an essential part regarding accessibility within the mobility chain. So currently, as this project is going forward, we're looking at a variety of different ramp solutions that are existing in Europe. As many of you know, Europe is a little bit farther along in terms of passenger train infrastructure and facilities. So we're looking there at a lot of different solutions. So these are 5 photos of different types of ramps. And the next slide shows 4 photos of different types of lifts, including manually powered, electrically powered, and hydraulic powered platform-based lifts. Just to give you an idea of the type of technologies that we're looking at, and this is not exhaustive, there's a number of other ones as well. In order to get an idea of the passenger needs, we're considering the types of passengers who would benefit from this this solution. So people using wheelchairs, people who might have a reduced mobility for walking, considering people with visual impairments or hearing impairments. Of course, in aging populations, people carrying a lot of luggage or baby prams and other parameters as well. So as I mentioned before, we are consulting extensively with passengers to determine the preference for the types of lifts, and this is based on the passenger's perception of the level of comfort of using the lift, safety, dignity, and previous experiences. And we're also looking at the operator needs and looking at the best types of technologies under various working conditions, so that we can consider that it can be quickly used and easily used by the operators as well in various conditions, inclement weather, and all number of other factors. So the next steps, we're currently looking at the technologies that are out there, and we'll be evaluating, based on the information that we obtain, a potential solution that could be applied to meet the technical constraints in Canada of this high platform height to board the train. And if a solution is found, so this first phase should be completed by the end of November, and if we're able to find a solution, we could be carrying out actual tests on a solution by early 2015. And I'd be happy to provide any more information on this project if people are interested, or answer any questions.
Indeed, Daniel. Yes, I can see some hands already. Lady here in purple, it's for you. Gentleman here. Oh, sorry, we need the... Who's run off for the microphone? Oh, here it is. Can't quite hear you.
we get the...
Can we check it?
My question is regarding the people that use wheelchairs and cannot transfer onto another type of seat and travel by train. From personal experience, I know there's only one spot per train for people in that use that type of walking aid. Now, you were talking about stations that had lifts already, or that did not have lifts, I think, or...
Yes, so we're looking at, I guess it would be 3 types of stations. There are stations that, you know, like the situation in Quebec City and Montreal that have a level platform and they have staff.
But other stations do not have level boarding stations.
That's correct.
Okay.
And some of them do have these manual crank lifts.
Okay, I was going to say yes, because I went to Ottawa and that was quite strenuous for the people there to lift me. It looked like a lot of hard work. So I was, how are you going to, sorry, I'm trying to formulate my question correctly here. In your surveying of people that are traveling using the train, are they giving you, are you selecting them to give you the information on what type of lifts they've experienced, so that they, or are you suggesting different type of lifts at different stations to be able to have a correct sample of what is being used and how and which one is more efficient?
So for this passenger consultation part of the project, we're going through associations, national associations, for people who use mobility aids to identify the passengers. And so we'll be asking passengers probably who have traveled and probably who have used the lift what their experiences are. And if I understand correctly, the methodology that's going to be used to do this is, for instance, there'll be in a survey some images shown of, you know, how does this type of lift make you feel based on the image shown? Would you feel safe using this type of lift, or would you feel comfortable using this type, not necessarily a lift, but maybe a ramp, also this type of device? So that's how we'll be obtaining feedback from passengers.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other brief questions right at the back there? And we'll come across.
Yes, one of my hats, is president of the Swiss National Council of the Right of the Disabled. And in Switzerland, we have a huge train network that works quite well, I would say. And I'm surprised about your study, because for us, as regard to the UN Convention of the Right of the Disabled, a transportation which is accessible is a transportation that you can use autonomously without any help. And all what you are searching for is something where people are dependent of the help of somebody else. So for me, your solution might be just a transitory solution. The only solution is to have low floor trains or higher platforms or lower tracks. This is what we try to fight in Switzerland, and we manage slowly. We now have higher platforms and trains with low floor and the small electric ramps that goes outside of the car. You said car? Yeah, the wagon that make that fill the gap between the platform and the train, and this must be the objective. Otherwise, Canada, who signed the Convention of the Right of the Disabled, is not fulfilling his obligations.
Okay, challenge for you, Daniel.
Yes, well, I would agree with what you say. The best solution would be a universally accessible solution that requires maybe no additional device for somebody to board a train regardless of their ability. So that's absolutely right. However, the situation in Canada with the current rolling stock and current makeup of stations poses physical and technical challenges that we're going to try to overcome with these solutions identified from this project. I think Via Rail is making significant efforts to improve the accessibility of their Via Rail's the national intercity carrier in Canada that we're working with for this project. They're making significant efforts to improve the accessibility of their rail cars and stations where they can, but obviously there's a long way to go for rail transportation in Canada, and I would agree it's probably much better in Switzerland.
You need a study trip to Switzerland, Daniel.
Yes, sure.
Okay, we'll take one more very brief question, if you would.
Once you're on the train, are you okay? Are the toilets accessible? It's been a long time since I took a train.
Yeah. To my knowledge, as someone had mentioned earlier, I think there is one spot per train for Via Rail where a wheelchair user who can't transfer can be positioned. And they are designing a lot of their cars to be more accessible and have an accessible washroom, though. But you'd have to check with Via Rail on that.
Okay, I do know that in a lot of countries they put the wheelchair position right next to the accessible washroom, which is not always the most desirable place to sit for several hours. But you know, there's logistics as well as aesthetics.